I've worked at Cyclepods for the last 5 years, and I've sold all of our 7,784 bike spaces. Before this, I worked for train operating companies in the north of England in different roles, but all involved stations and their facilities. So what I'm trying to say is that I kind of know where you're coming from and some of the problems that you face. The pinnacle of my career was looking after 471 railway stations, the most any human can in this country. And put into context, that's about 67 more stations than in the whole of the Netherlands. So the first thing to think about is the cycle parking itself. If you're building a hub from scratch, then let the racks decide the space, not the other way round. If you're having to work within an existing space, you may need to mix it up a bit. I think, Paul, you found this at Peckham, for example, where there was room, but there wasn't enough room for all one thing, and you wanted to have a bike hire element and also the repair element. It seems to me that two-tier has to be the way forward. There's two hubs there. Obviously, one's two-tier, one's single-tier. And as Conrad said earlier, when you're doing a basic justification exercise, you can divide the cost of this hub, Lewis, by 100 spaces, whereas a similar-sized one, you're only doing it by 50 spaces. So just simple maths, really, there. And you know what they say about statistics. Local newspapers love to bash train operating companies and highlight white elephants or generally any waste of money. So don't give them any ammunition, basically. They'll just love to say, oh, they've spent all that money and there's only 3 bikes in there. We've heard about access control, we've heard about CCTV from Ed and Mark. Now, as you guys will well know, these elements can take on a life of their own and become projects in themselves. Access control runs the risk of becoming an issue for station staff who are forever dealing with swipe card losses, or they give out the allocated 50 or 100 cards only to find, like gym membership, great for the first few weeks, and then it tails off. But then you've still got a waiting list of people waiting for swipe cards, and all they can do is see an empty hub. And so you can just imagine the tweets and the newspaper articles that will generate. Other schemes, other hub schemes have started slowly. Merseyrail, for example, started out charging a refundable deposit of £10. But when you rang them to register, it was the penalty fare line and quite an aggressive phone message that basically said, if you were stupid enough not to pay and get caught, then you need to do this. And it didn't mention the cycle hub thing, so that was, and they never rang me back. 3 times I tried there, so perhaps that was an issue, not the 10 quid. Merseyrail then reduced it to £5, but now it's free. Okay, so Southern, as we've seen, allow their key holders free access. So all you do, you go on the Southern website, apply for a key card, put your name, address, contact phone number, and the card comes out. I think I got mine in about 3 days. And there's no additional signing in, there's no deposit to pay. I can use this, well, I have used this to get in and out of the hub today. The other, and by going down this smart card route or the fob route and having it administered centrally, you're avoiding any issues with station staff and any customer service problems that they might encounter by having irate people there saying, so it's a good way forward. Hopefully, Mark has given you a possible solution to CCTV issues about finding a feed and running cables from there, ensuring ports are available, and that the quality is good enough. And I often hear from project managers saying things like, they'll take the opportunity now to renew the system at my expense. All of a sudden, your project money has had to pay for new CCTV. I think it will be popular as it takes away one more obstacle for the project manager and means listening to one less contractor sucking their teeth before delivering the classic line, "That's going to cost." And as with CCTV, LED lighting, that comes on, because again, our system is, you can have it set so that a PIR, someone coming into the hub, will trigger the lights so that you haven't got the lights on all day. And the good thing about LED is you're not risking giving someone epilepsy for the light to flick on and off until it actually gets going. It's on straight away. And this is good news for the sustainability and maintenance of the hub, because, and I use sustainability in both the ecological sense and also the long-term financial sense. The monies that usually come with projects like these are purely for the capital expenditure. There isn't an element of operational money. That's got to be found by the franchise, the business going forward. And the accountants on the exec board won't be able to see the correlation between the hub and increased passenger numbers, but you will be able to give them that info because, of course, you'll have the statistics on your mobile or on your tablet or in your email feed. Another something that is becoming more popular, and Alex, this will be in the toolkit, maybe electric bike charging. It's a bit early, I think, to go down one particular route. Those of us old enough to remember Betamax and VHS, let's just see how things pan out, but it's good to leave space within your facility to future-proof it for something like this. We've seen the mobile phone industry is going down the USB ports for charging phones now, so that might be, I don't know what the future holds for that. This slide shows possible alternatives. You can have battery packs plugged into e-bikes, or a more compact solution is where the cyclist actually brings their own power lead, and that's a lockable box that has a plug in it, and then you just plug in your lead, your power lead. But of course, obviously, you're going to have to lug your power lead with you. Actually, just as an aside about telling people or giving information on how many people are going through the hub, and this is a heads up for the local authority people here, we've got a really cost-effective cycle counter. It's a radar system, and is it about this big and about so fat, and it can be put onto light columns, and will measure the cycles coming past. It's a mobile system. It gets its feed from the. Is it got a battery inside it?
Battery inside and solar.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's a mobile thing. So once you've done a scheme around the station to facilitate cyclists to reach the station, you can report back on how many people are actually using that particular route to get to the station. So that's something that we can provide at a minimal cost. And other cycle counters exist, obviously, but there's no having to put channels in the pathways or anything like that. We've also included public use bike pumps and repair stands. You saw them at Lewis. They're a great help, obviously, and it also shows, as I think James said, that you actually are thinking about the needs of the cyclist. It's not just a case of, oh look, we've cut you some really nice bike racks. You're going to be happy now. And something else that's come up in conversation, perhaps we need to put some sort of stool for people to sit on while they change their shoes. Yeah, so we also need to remember that commuters don't come to the station in good time. I used to hone my arrival at my commuter station seamlessly. I could grab a donut, flash my season ticket and jump on the train just as the doors were closing. These days, a cyclist will want to streamline locking of their bike before grabbing an expensive coffee, paying contactlessly for it, flashing a smart card and jumping on the doors as they're closing. And here, I've got three types of entry systems. One's a completely open hub, and that's great. You can just wheel your bike in, lock up and go. The middle one is slightly more involved. I'm not saying that this particular train operating company has 2 members of staff in each hub, each secure cycle area, but there's a roller shutter. So you present your hub and then you need to wait for the roller shutter to come up. And it's time consuming, and it might be fine for leisure traffic, well, even then, but it's guaranteed you get there and you think, 2 minutes, there's a delayed train coming in, I'm going to jump on that. So, and then we think we've got it about right with Brighton. Again, we looked at the flows in Holland, as James was saying, when, like, I don't know, 700 people will get off a train at 5 o'clock at Haarlem. You see them coming down the stairs, and then they all disappear into the racks, and then they all start filing through the exit. And here we've put the reader away from the doors, so that as you approach the reader, press it, the door will open before you actually get there. So, of course, if you've got your bike, you're not holding people up behind you. And I do it when I'm in London, especially at Victoria. My God, that station drives me mad. You get to you've got your Oyster card in your hand, and there's somebody in front of you who's, what do I do? No, just use your Oyster. Yeah. So, of course, then it backs up and people get aerated, or maybe it's just me, I don't know. Okay, so always remember that you get what you pay for. And here I've got a couple of examples of some two-tier. As you can see, it's some of it's been damaged by vandalism. The first, over there on the left, that's a failed weld. And the middle one, there's nothing wrong with that middle one. That's how it's supposed to be. But you need to lift your bike to waist height to get that up there. If you've got no upper body strength like me, because I just work in an office, or you're short, it isn't great. You know, it's not great. It's just a couple of more examples. I'm not sure what happened here, whether that bar was too short or whether somebody unbolted it and it just moved. I don't know. So always remember, a design guide can help your permanent staff, as well as any contracting project managers you've got, to choose the right equipment, or at least to go down the road of choosing the right equipment. And we've said this right at the beginning. Alternatively, ask your colleagues at group level, if you're part of a group, for their experience, or, I'm going to put it, ask other train operators. As a body, and we meet through the Cycle Rail Working Group and the Cycle Rail Awards. Ask them about their experience with either a supplier or a type of product. And when stuff goes wrong, when things break, it's how your supplier deals with it that's important as well. If you want my advice, you're going to get it anyway. So involve your suppliers right at the beginning. Site visits will give the supplier a chance to give you advice as well. Might be a good, preliminary ideas of numbers will help you decide if a scheme or a location is feasible. You might think that this particular area is great, but a supplier might come along and say, it'd be good if it was over there. But again, it brings another element to the proceedings. The ground worker and the cycle parking supplier should liaise at a really early stage. Okay. Tongue-in-cheek, better still, should be one and the same, like the people that delivered Lewis. Okay. I can't say who they are, but it begins with a C and ends in pods. Okay, and a hub will attract a lot of interest locally. And again, we've said this before, so manage your stakeholders and don't forget your station staff. Three of us had a particularly interesting conversation on the way back from Lewis. The conductor on the train was saying, hardly anybody's using Brighton, isn't it terrible? I said, well, it's early days, it just needs more people to... and he came back, so it just sounded as if, there needed more work needed to be done, even with on-board train crew, that's... and of course, it's just before you're opening it, or just when you've got a problem, that someone always said, oh, you should have said. Oh, why didn't you say something beforehand? These are things that drive you mad. And finally, have a few schemes priced up by your supplier so that when Conrad says there's some money, you're ready. You can go and present, these...
Banks are available.
But there's only one Conrad.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.